Hello, welcome everybody to the live show for Eldest. I have my copy of the book here. It is so beat up. This is my copy from my childhood. And I actually just looked. I was looking through it and it has like my name written in there.
Oh,
I know. I think it was one of my parents that probably did it so they remembered whose books were whose because my sisters and I all had books. But yes. Welcome to the live show. I'm really sorry to everyone that the live show for Aragon was set to unlisted instead of public, so no one watched it when it first happened. So that is completely my bad, and I'm very sorry. So yes. This is my friend Erin. She doesn't do booktube, but she likes to read, so we're reading these books together.
and these books were such a huge part of my childhood too. Like that was about my whole personality from the 4th through the 7th grade.
Right? I know. Oh, yeah. I was completely obsessed with this series when I was younger too. So I totally understand. Okay. So, Eldest, by the way, this is going to be a completely spoiler-filled chat. The first one has a little bit of spoiler-free stuff at the beginning if you do want to watch that. But this is the second book in the series, and so everything is just going to be spoilery from here on out. So if you haven't read the first or this one, I don't recommend watching this. Unless you don't care about spoilers, which I do. So, okay. Well, it started out very with a bang, I guess you could say. Like it really started. It did not like ease you into this book at all.
Mm-hmm. And what you were talking about from the last live stream about how he interprets himself to be in these really tough situations with no way out but to make these oaths. I totally saw what you meant at the beginning of this.
Yes, like, exactly.
To a meeting, say, we need you to swear fealty to us, basically. He's like, oh shoot, there's no way out but to swear fealty to somebody.
Yeah, you're like, no, you actually could just say, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Because the writers never swore, well, at the beginning that's different, but like once they became the writers, they didn't swear fealty to people. So like, why are you all of a sudden thinking that you have to? Like, no, you have the power in this situation. Just say no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what are they gonna do? Like, say, oh, sorry, you can't fight with us anymore.
Right, exactly. Like, are they gonna kick you out? They can't win without you. Like they literally have no option but to pretty much put up with any decision that you make, which is a lot of power. So I'm glad that didn't like go to his head. But you have to be realistic. Like they need you way, way more than you need them.
And Saphira made that distinction. She's like, I'm not swearing any oaths. So it's funny then that Aragon feels like he has to where she doesn't. Like you guys are really kind of one unit. So
yeah.
You're no more pressured than she is.
Exactly. Because if the Varden got mad that he didn't swear, he'd just be like, okay, well, I'm going to go with the elves then.
Like, happy to have me too.
Right? He's like, everyone wants me. I'm like, I'm kind of a hot commodity here. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I totally got what you meant there.
Yeah. And honestly, as when I was younger, I feel like I didn't really feel that way. I was like, oh, he was backed in a corner. But now reading it again, I'm like, he was not.
Just because he says he is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So. Then he arrives at the elves and starts making oaths over there too.
I know. I just feel like dude needs to stop. Like, keep your little mouth shut. Like, I do understand that he would have to like make promises to his mentor and stuff, right? Because like that's a very strong bond and he's giving you a lot of information and knowledge that can be very dangerous. Hello, Mackenzie, welcome. But that's very different, right? Like I feel like that's a different vow that he's making there. He's kind of work really hard and he's vowing to like not divulge these secrets. And that's legitimate, right? Because some of these secrets are like, can kill many, many people, so.
Yeah, and I suppose it is, I mean, there's that exchange there where he can be privy to these secrets so long as he doesn't divulge them.
Right, exactly. With the Varden, it's pretty much, you have to swear to us, but we're not really giving you anything in return. Like, they are on the side that he wants to be on, But they're not really like giving things to him, right? Like this isn't an exchange. It's like, I'm picking your side because I think it's the right side. But like, this isn't an exchange of things. So why should he have to swear fealty to them?
Yeah, sure. And speaking of all these odes, there's like poorly worded blessings too. That was such a bummer.
I remember in the last one you asked me, like, do we figure out what happens? I'm like, yes, yes, we do. We very much do, unfortunately, figure out what happened to that child.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a shame. Every time they describe her, it's like her horrible voice, her appalling visage. It's like
I know. I'm like, this poor child. She's like literally an infant still.
Just a very, very bitter infant.
Dude, I would be bitter too. Like, this sucks.
And her like poor grandma too. That must be so confusing. Like,
I know this woman. Like, what is happening? There's a demon in my inside my grandchild. Or her keeper. I don't actually know if it's a relative or not.
But biologic grandma. But
yeah, it's crazy.
Very nice woman to stick around when she's doing all this weird stuff.
I know. I remember what happens too. I haven't started reading Brizinger yet, but I do remember what happens with her. So that's kind of interesting. Okay. So at the beginning, when Ajihad gets killed, right? And then the twins and Murtagh get taken into the tunnels. When I read it when I was younger, I just kind of went with it. But reading it this time, I'm like, why did you think that they would jump out of the hole, kill Ajihad, and then grab the other three just to throw them down a hole after taking off some of their clothes? That seems so weird. Like that seems so unrealistic. Why would you believe that?
Especially when you know the twins are super sketchy. Like, we've known that.
Right. And you know that Murtagh is the son of Morzan. And he has been with Galbatorix in the past and then escaped from Galbatorix.
Right.
Which kind of implies Galbatorix probably wants to get him back.
Yeah, because they would want to like take him for punishment, not just put him down the hole.
Yeah, like there's a reason Galbatorix kept him all these years after his dad died. Like, he didn't just keep him because he liked his dad and they were friends. That's not his personality. So yeah, I'm looking at it again. I'm like, why would you ever believe that they were dead after that? That seems so not. That just doesn't seem realistic. Especially Arya, right? She's smart.
Right. Yeah, Aragon. We understand.
Sure. Yeah, Aragon's dumb.
But no one disagreed. They all just accepted it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like, Arya, why do you believe in this crap? Like, we all know that's not true. Yeah.
Oh, it was so sad with King Oric. Like, definitely loved him. He seemed like a really good.
Oh, that was the worst. King Hrothgar?
That's what I meant. Sorry.
That was his name, right? Hrothgar? And then Oric's his nephew.
Oric's the other buddy.
Sorry. Yeah. That was the worst death for me. I was like, oh, that was mean. That was mean, Murtagh. Don't forgive you for that.
But what a bonus that Noswata turned out to be such a badass.
She's cool. I really like her. Yeah. Yeah.
And we see her growing pains a little bit too, but generally she has a like strength of conviction and holds herself with enough authority that she's handling leadership really well.
Yeah, I do think it shows that her dad was planning on her taking over for him all along. Like, I know it seemed to surprise a lot of other people, but it just really seems like that was the plan, that he was like kind of preparing her for that, because otherwise she wouldn't have been able to like jump in and do as well as she did that soon.
Yeah, that's a good point. They make this big deal like, oh, there's no plan of inheritance, but maybe it was just supposed to be assumed it would go to your child and just no one thought of that.
Well, I think that they just assumed they'd have more time, you know? Like that she was very young and Ajihad wasn't old. So I'm guessing they just assumed that there would be more time. to kind of prepare other people for that. Like, it's very clear that they prepared her for that, but it just kind of, it doesn't seem like they prepared anyone else necessarily for it, because they all thought that she was going to be able to be this pawn that they could easily manipulate. But she's like, actually, my dad's been preparing me for this since I was like 5. So
yeah, what a shame that the whole council is so power hungry.
Except for, what is Jormungandr? Is that his name?
That sounds right.
The guy who's like in charge of their armies, essentially.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to care as much. Like, he's definitely on there and he is trying to like balance the power, but I just don't think he cares about having power as much as the other people do, for sure. Because like, he very quickly jumps behind Naswada and he's like, yep, I got your back, let's do this, I'll be just to you what I was to your father. And so
yeah, I'm sure that makes a big difference for her.
Yeah, and I think he's probably the best one to have not be power hungry and to be on your side, since he's in charge
of the armies. Yeah,
exactly. Like, he's a good one to like really not be trying to lead a coup or something, because he'd probably win. Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, how did you feel about the 2 POVs? Because it went to 2 POVs and then went to 3, right? We had Naswada, Aragon, and Roran.
Which I have gotten really invested in Roran throughout this book, so I love it.
I know, isn't he just a sweetie?
He's a sweetie and he's a toughie, and like, we see his own wrestles with morality. And well, Aragon, he, like last time we talked about, like, maybe he's a little too sensitive with his morality. Like,
he's so idealistic.
What he had to do, he was very practical.
Yeah.
Really rose to the occasion very quickly. And so I loved seeing Roran's story. I think he's maybe my favorite protagonist now over Aragon.
I really like Roran too because of his practicality. Like, Aragon seems so young, and I do love Aragon. Like, I think he's a great protagonist, and I think though, like, the next couple books, I like him even more, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, as he acquires some wisdom.
Yeah, he starts to be more realistic about things and less naive and idealistic and backed into a corner when he really is not, right? Like, he gets some like self-awareness, but also like awareness of the world and where he actually stands in it. And he's like, no, I can actually make some decisions here, and I don't have to just be like a pawn for people. I think, and you don't have to tell me because it's a spoiler for next one, but I think the next one starts with Aragon and Roran together, though, which I actually really like their dynamic together. I think they're super fun together.
Oh, and there's the anger there, but there's just always that underlying, like, we're family, and so we're gonna look out for each other.
Well, and they kind of complement each other well too, because Aragon is very powerful. And he's very smart in a lot of ways, but I feel like Roran is very much like the practical one and like has the most common sense, just like natural common sense, not sense because you've learned from a million books. So
yeah, and he has the leadership skills, which honestly Aragon is not very good at. Like, he's at least as of now, like, he's still in that learner role and he's very powerful. But like, when he goes to talk to groups of people, he gets stage fright.
Yeah, like, he's very inspiring because of who he is and like as a writer. But if he wasn't a writer, no one would be listening to him. Yeah, exactly. So funny.
Yeah, so I think you're right. They each have their strengths and they complement each other well, and they're going to be stronger as a unit.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so I have some notes on some things too. The world, like, their just world in general has so many societal rules that almost are just setting everyone up for failure. It's like, you can take offense or have these like long-lasting family feuds over like anything. I'm like, how does your society continue to function? Like when Roran, Roran proposes to Katrina without getting her dad's blessing, like, oh, this is going to split the entire village. I'm like, you have the most fragile society if this is going to split your entire village.
Right. Or like the elves, where you have to say this greeting exactly perfectly, or it'll be a feud that lasts for centuries.
Yeah, you're like, I don't understand how you people survive, because are you telling me these are the first teenagers who fell in love and decided to get married, or like one of them got pregnant or something? Like, you can't tell me this is an uncommon thing that absolutely never happens in your society. Like, this can't be as earth-shattering as you're making it out to be. That'd be ridiculous. Your society wouldn't survive. Teenagers would ruin it. Oh.
Yeah, for sure.
Or like how Warren just accepts that lady is like, oh, you owe me a debt because my husband died because of your family. What? The crazy flying beaked people came in and ate him. How on earth is that at all Warren's fault? Like,
right.
his dad got killed too.
Yeah, which is exactly, he made that arc of like, being mad at Aragon for blaming him for Gara's death, and then kind of realizing like, he did the best he could under those circumstances. It wasn't directly his fault. He forgave, but he's not expecting her to forgive.
He just like accepts it. He's like, oh, yep, fair enough. I'm like, not fair enough. You weren't even here. You were in a town like a couple away. Like, what?
Right. Someday she's going to try to kill me. I guess that's my lot.
Yeah, they have the most strange societal rules that I actually don't think would be able to be maintained. Like, if you had this easy offense that led to these long-lasting feuds, like, you couldn't do it. Like, it just would not work as a society. It just could not. But I also feel like the story in this book slowed down a little bit. Like, I do feel like the first one, we moved very quickly, and there was some description and stuff, but in this one, we really kind of slowed down more to like live in their lives with them a little bit more than we did in the first one, which I'm guessing is why, it's like twice the size, but
right.
Which I loved. I actually like that.
Right. The books get 100 pages longer each book.
Exactly. So yeah, I actually really like that we kind of slowed down a little bit, got more of the like slice of life thing, especially like while he's training. I really liked that.
Yeah, for sure. Like, there's, an exciting climax at the end, but really most of this book is just Aragon's training and Roran's journey.
Yeah, and then Naswada just kind of trying to find her footing and figure out how to make things work in this new situation that she's found herself in. So yeah, I agree. And I actually really like that. And I think that's part of the reason I like fantasy so much, is because that's so common in fantasy, because you have to like get to know the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it almost feels more immersive because you are experiencing the world with them.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of this book is the elves like celebration when like the people, they come out of the dragons like come out of the people, and that magical, and they like change Aragon. I'm like, this is so cool.
So cool.
I remember I just loved it growing up, and I still loved it reading it. I was like, this is cool. This is fun. I do enjoy this.
Yeah, just a multi-day party of like art and intoxicating songs.
Right? You're like drinking intoxicating substances, having magic just like woo all over. I mean, it sounds fun. It sounds like a very good time.
Yeah, and Aragon's story there that he presented at that, I know it was supposed to be an allegory, and so I thought it could be good to investigate that a little bit more and figure out what he was getting at with that.
Yeah, his poem thing that he wrote, or I don't know if he named it a poem, but that's kind of what it seemed like.
Yeah, the like live among the Shadowlands, or in the land of shadows, anyways, is how like each. Yeah. And so I wondered what his moral was exactly there, because it was kind of a tragedy in that it ended with him resigning himself and just dying and passing into the land of shadows.
Was he talking about his injury from Durza? Because I feel like he very much associates shadows with the shade. And so when I was reading, I would kind of like connect it to that experience, how, because at that time he was still injured, right? He still had his injury. And so I think a lot of it was him feeling that he was just like going more and more into that land of shadows, or into that pain that he associated with the shade. And so he just kind of like resigned himself to the fact that like eventually this is going to kill him, but he's going to do everything he can before that happens, I guess.
Yeah.
Just kind of like acceptance of it.
Right. Yeah, in that facing the shade, he lost his fear of it and just had that acceptance.
Yeah. I do feel really bad though, because it's kind of crazy how they describe how bad he got, right? Where he couldn't even like walk straight, and like when Arya saw him again after not seeing him for so long, like she didn't even hardly recognize him because of how bad it was taking a toll on his body.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it sounds so hard to like keep going back and trying to do your sword training and things.
I would be like, no.
That takes so much guts to keep going back and just know.
I totally would not have done it. I would have been like, no, I'm good, thank you.
All right, I'll be a totally theoretical dragon rider.
I would have been a terrible dragon rider, because that I'd be like, nah, I'm good. I am good, thank you.
Yes, it's time for me to retire.
Oh my gosh. They'd be like, your last hope. I'd be like, well, that's just too bad, isn't it? Oh my gosh.
I guess the Führer will have to take it from here.
Also, speaking of Aragon and Arya, his flirting is absolutely painful. Like it just hurts me. It actually hurts to read it. I'm just like, oh, I can't. Like he's like 16, he's 17-ish, right? She's like over 100 years old. Dude, come on. Like, what are you doing?
Very important child who keeps badgering you.
Right? Like, she shut him down so many times. Like, so many times. She's like, you need to stop. And he's just like, oh, maybe it'll change now. And I'm like, it won't.
Right. Yeah, he keeps like begging her, like, oh, please, let's just be friends. I promise I won't do that anymore. And then, like 2 chapters later, he does it again.
No. And I'm like, honey, she is old enough to be your great grandma, like not even just your grandma. Like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no way you can. And like he's reading about those elf-human relationships and like, oh, they never ever work out. There's too much of a
difference. There's only been like 3 of them in history, anyways. Like it wasn't even a common thing at all. And usually they were between riders and elves, because riders were also old.
But even then, they couldn't relate to each other, it said.
Yeah.
It's like either one would age and die, and that would stink, or they couldn't relate to each other because they're just 2 different worlds. And he's failing to acknowledge that she's not relating to him and his 17-year-old self.
I know. Oh, kills me, Aragon.
I think when I read it as a kid, I thought it was much more romantic. Like
the what?
When I read it as a kid, I thought it was much more romantic.
I know. I was like kind of shipping them when I was younger. Now I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like, you're a child. Yeah. This is like illegal in our world.
So sweet that he loves her so much. It's just like, okay, guy, you got to move on.
Also, I feel like he doesn't actually really know her.
No.
Like, he's in love with the idea of her.
Oh, she's beautiful and mysterious. Therefore, we're destined.
Yeah. I feel like reading it this time, I don't have the same obsession with Arya that I did before, because she is just kind of like a very distant person. And so it's hard to feel the same connection to her as you feel as people like Roran, right? Where you're in his head and you really know like his motivations and stuff like that. With her, she's like, you kind of get it, but she is very aloof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she doesn't really show her emotions very much.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm sure there's depth of emotions there. We're not really privy to it.
Right, exactly. I will say, though, that I do find it kind of interesting that it is the female is the much older one and in the relationship, right? Because usually it's like this like ancient male fae or elf falling in love with this human girl who's like 16, right? So in this case, it's kind of like opposite.
Right.
You don't really see much, but you also in Lord of the Rings, you kind of get that too. So I'm like, is it because it's written by a guy? I don't know.
Yeah, because it's true. We kind of tend to accept it a little more when it's the immortal, handsome man, and
yeah,
maybe that's inappropriate too. Definitely, that's inappropriate too.
yeah, just a little bit.
A little bit.
Gosh. Uh,
Okay, I have a specific question too that I wanted to ask you about. So when he first goes to the other dwarf city,
yes.
and the Swelden Rack Anhuin, the Tears of Anhuin, they start that blood feud by like twisting the beard hair with the ring and throwing it down.
Yes.
I don't really get why. So I know that clan had helped the riders against Galbatorix, and then they all died as a result of it. But it's not like the riders betrayed them or killed them or anything. So why do they have such beef with the existing?
No. So they banded with the riders, I think, before Galbatorix betrayed them. I think that was my understanding, is they already had the agreement with the riders. Like they were already partnering with them and had given like the majority of their people and their best warriors to the riders while Galbatorix was a rider. And then they were betrayed by the riders because Galbatorix was a rider. So I think now they just don't trust the riders at all, and they have beef with riders in general.
Got it. Yeah, I guess I was thinking like,
that was my understanding.
Killed so many riders, like there was a clear distinction. But I guess if you're just calling Galbatorix the riders, okay, I can see that.
Yeah, that was my understanding, is that they felt they were betrayed by all of them because Galbatorix was a rider, and yeah, he betrayed them, but like that was their own people. They got too arrogant and let him turn into what he was, and ended up getting them all killed. That's kind of how I got.
Siding with Aragon, whose whole mission is to defeat Galbatorix, seems like a better way to get revenge than to take out Aragon.
I know. They don't seem very smart, but also, like I said, this society holds their grudges and their feuds for so long over things that they shouldn't, right? And I'm like, it doesn't make sense. It's not good for your society. I don't know how y'all survived it all. It's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, I guess I can accept that now. It seemed like I was doing research about it, trying to figure out why they were so mad at him.
Right. And that was my understanding, is like they had partnered with the writers and they felt betrayed by the writers.
Galbatorix. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll take it. Yeah, I know I get that with like generally not liking writers in general. Like it's basically this immortal race that you're all kind of beholden to.
And apparently they got a little too cocky, and now all of you are paying the price for it. So
yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's a common thread, is like the common people distrustful of the magic people. So that's fair.
And rightly so. But also, I mean, this is something I kind of was noticing this time around that I felt like was so much more sketch, is how Nasuata was in her head thinking like, oh, I don't like having to rely on these magic people, but I have to until I win. And then I'm pretty much going to like, it almost sounded like she was going to either stop them from using magic, or like somehow force them to like be under some control, or like kill the magic users or something. Like it really sounded like she was going to try to almost exterminate magic from their society afterwards.
Okay. I don't think I picked up on that, but that's...
Yeah, because she was talking about like Duvran Gregata, right? And she was saying like, I hate having to rely on them, and once we win, like we need to put something in place to control the magic users, because magic is just like an unfair thing and it shouldn't exist, and so we have to control them. And I'm like, that doesn't sound very good. That sounds really sketch, actually.
I mean, I get it as we're learning about how you can like pinch out hundreds of lives at once just by blocking an artery. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you would not be into that as someone who can't do it.
Right, which is
Duvron Grgada, for the first couple books, we definitely think of as a pretty sketchy organization. So her experience with magic users, with the twins, also probably colors her experience.
yeah, true. Like I get it, but also I'm like, you can't really just start saying like, I need to control the magic users. Like you, no, like you can't just tell people that they are now under your control. Like they're people. They're your own. They're your people too. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of them, it sounds like, and there's a lot of them who aren't as powerful and then are more powerful. There's some that can do it in different ways. Like, how are you ever going to control that? All you're going to do is you're going to cause fear among your people, and you're going to turn them into something that your people hate.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We have Aragon here kind of trusting, like, oh, I don't ever want to be in leadership. I'm going to trust that to the people who are good at it. But who as a leader really is infallible?
Yeah.
And we were starting to see that with Maswada, that she's great in so many ways. She's great in that she's, has what it takes to win if Vardon's ever going to win. But we don't actually know much about her policy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I just feel like that's probably, if the next book he writes is from a later time after all of this, I wouldn't be surprised if that's something we see, is where the people now like fear and hate magic users and like that's a problem now.
Yeah,
it sounds like that could easily become that way if that's the way Neswata feels about it.
Okay, which, speaking of fearing magic users, so I'm jumping ahead a little to the final battle.
Yeah.
Where Aragon, he starts like tapping into the minds of the soldiers on the other side, makes them go disassemble their own catapults. Like, that's the first time we've seen the mind entering being actually controlling their bodies too. And I think that is super freaky and sketch. Like, that's
well, yeah, obviously it is. Like
like we kind of, they didn't really foreshadow that use of magic at all. It's just like, oh, he's doing it and he's controlling their bodies. But that's a major development, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why you have to have your people protecting your, right? Like both sides have to have magic users to protect against the other side's magic users.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrifying. They talked about the invasion of privacy of like, oh, being in their head, knowing their memories, but oh, look, they can actually control your actions as well.
I feel like most magic users couldn't. I feel like you'd have to be pretty powerful to do that, honestly. So it's probably quite rare. Not saying it's okay to do it, but I just like, I bet it would be very rare. Probably like Aragon, Murtagh, Galbatorix, right? Like you'd probably have to be very strong to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's 3 people who are very strong who can do that.
Yeah. Right. So like it is sketch. Like yeah. But what about Angela using her? She like just poisons half their camp. I'm like, I love it.
Right. Oh, yeah, Angela. I want to be an Angela when I grow up, I think.
I love Angela. I think it's so funny how Aragon is like all conflicted about that. He's like, oh, it seems like underhanded tactics. Shut up.
Like, you just went and controlled their bodies. Like,
yeah. Like you're just going to snip off their little arteries and watch them all fall dead. Mm-hmm. How is that any different? And I feel like he's just so self-righteous sometimes. We're like, well, on the field of battle, like this is poisoning them in their tents. I'm like, so dead is dead.
Oh, he makes that distinction all the time. It's like, if they are fighting me, it's okay for me to kill them. But it's like you can so easily overpower them. There's functionally no difference if they're armed or not.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, no, it's not different. Angela's just smarter than you and she understands how life works. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're like, once it turns into war, like, war is messy and ugly and horrible and like, war's not fair.
And they touch on this, but like with him feeling some moral struggle over it. But we know that most of Galbatorix's army is like forcefully conscripted. And so that makes it so much worse to hear all the battles too, is that we know that, neither side is actually evil.
Yeah. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what other things did I put down here? Oh, I feel like Aragon was not a very good friend to Auric during this book, and I felt so bad for him.
Right, halfway through his training, he shows up like, "Hey, have you forgotten about me? I'm here too."
Oh,
I did forget about you.
exactly. Or like when Arya took him to meet that Smith, what was her name? Runan?
For sure. I thought right away he should introduce her.
Immediately, your first thought should have been, oh my gosh, Auric would love this. I should bring him. And he didn't even think of it. I'm like, you self-centered little brat. You're just thinking about hanging out with this girl that you find cute and your best friend who saved your life multiple times and came with you on this journey, leaving his people, leaving like the love of his life. And you're just like, oh, I forgot you were here.
Right, accepted you as his foster brother into his clan.
Right? Like, ugh, Aragon.
Yeah, he's gets a little caught up in his head. He's a very
selfish little teenage boy. I love Auric. He's so cute.
He is so cute. My favorites too.
One thing I do like about this book too, and I feel like it's something that I do appreciate in books a lot, is their plans work a lot, right? Like when they have a well executed plan, it works. And I love that because I feel like in so many books, like things will just go wrong constantly. Like they'll just have to improvise and change and like the plans don't work out. But in this book, they actually do. Like they come up with a plan, like especially Roran's side, right? They'll come up with a plan, they'll execute it the way they planned, and it'll work. Like they'll have little issues, but like overall it'll work because they executed it the way they planned it. And I'm like, I actually really like that in books.
Yeah, that's true. We don't just need something to go wrong for the drama every time.
Yeah, like some book, I swear that some books every time. But like in these, I feel like it's kind of rare that something will go wrong when they're executing a plan, and so it makes it a little bit more realistic when that does happen, right? Instead of just like, oh, of course something went wrong. You're like, oh, something went wrong this time. So I don't know. I actually like that.
And I mean, okay, so while I love Roran, it did totally drive me bonkers how many things he was like, oh, we'll figure that out when we get to it. He's got Carvajal following him. It's like, oh, we don't have enough supplies to get all the way to our destination. So I guess we'll stop at this city and we'll figure out what we can do. And like it happened to keep working out for him. But with that much responsibility of that many people beholden to you, you can't just be like, I'll figure it out when I get there.
I know. He's very lucky that he met up with Jode. Like,
absolutely. What would they have done if they hadn't? Like,
Jode saved his butt. I feel like Jode doesn't get enough credit. Like he saves them so many times. This guy is actually pretty much a boss.
For sure. And yeah, it makes me so sad, his poor relationship with his wife, Jode, that she's,
It improves though, if I remember.
And you can tell how much he loves her, and she's just so mad about their material circumstances. And he's so forgiving of that too. Like, oh, it's just not what she's used to. Like, he's not at all upset with her for being shallow.
But the thing is, she doesn't know. Like this whole time, she thinks he's just making horrible business decisions, and she's so frustrated with him, right? Because she has no idea that he's helping the Varden, that he helped steal a dragon. She doesn't know any of these things, so she's just like, how are you making horrible business decisions over and over and over, right? To her, it just looks like he's dumb.
Right. And I get that. That's a common theme too. Like, oh, I can't tell them to protect them. But yeah, I think this does emphasize the importance of communication in your relationships.
Right, because I'm not going to lie, I'd probably be pretty ticked too. I'd be like, sweetie, like, what is wrong with you? Like, how do you keep making terrible decisions so much?
And if when he finally tells me that I'm part of this rebel organization, why didn't you tell me sooner?
I'm like, are you kidding me right now? You let me spend years thinking that you were just really bad at business.
But I'm so grateful also that they met Jode, because it would have made me really sad if they had decided to pirate the barges like he was originally thinking he might have to do.
You know, I liked the guy that took him.
For sure. And, you know, he was very shady, like, oh, we're transporting livestock. And this guy was nice enough to not make a big fuss when it turns out it was a whole village. And
That guy was really nice. He got so lucky.
he like excused it by like, oh, he's got enough other investments that he'll be fine. But he's still like a middle class peasant. Like,
Right, like, does he? Do you actually know if he has enough other investments? Like, what if these are the only barges he owns?
Yeah, this is how he makes his money, is by these barges.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, I agree. I like that they stole the big ship, though, and Jode's just like, whew, yay. It's just like adventure. I like it. Oh, I put King Hrothgar here too. I loved him. One thing in going back to that last battle, it's absolute, like, I feel like that battle kind of was a like nail in the coffin for how horrible Galbatorix is as like a ruler, because those people didn't really need to fight like that. Like, Murtagh could have come in and like wiped them out. Dude's got so much power, right? Like, he could have just come in and he could have saved like probably tens of thousands of people's lives. Yet Galbatorix was willing to let this battle go on and on and on and just watch thousands and thousands of people die to weaken Aragon so Murtagh would have a better chance of being able to capture him alive and bring him back. Like, that is horrible. That is
people about to die.
Yeah, like, they didn't need to, right? Murtagh could have come in and changed the tide of that battle so quickly.
And frankly, Murtagh was so much more powerful than Aragon. He didn't really need to weaken Aragon. Like,
I think this is the way I interpret it, but I think he did it so there was a better chance of taking him alive, right? So, like, he had a better chance of being able to overpower him without killing him. Yeah. That's what I figured.
I mean, he was totally able to immobilize
that. I don't think it really would have mattered, but I think that's probably why he did it that way.
Yeah, I was puzzling over that. Like, why did Murtagh have to wait so long for dramatic effect? Like, before you
Yeah, that's what I thought it was, is he didn't want to waste his stuff, Murtagh's stuff, to overpower Aragon, because that stuff is more powerful and more meaningful to them. Sure. So that was my understanding of it, is like he's willing to like kill these people. He doesn't care about them, so that there's less risk to the things that he actually thinks are important to him, like Murtagh and the power that comes with him.
For sure.
Like, he didn't want to risk anything happening to them, because even on that fight in the air, like, Aragon got in a good slash, right? Like, he could have cut off the leg of Murtagh's dragon or something, right? Like, and that would have like permanently damaged the dragon, which Galbatorix cares about so much more significantly than he does the people. So that was kind of how I saw it.
I mean, that's true. When the dragons are fighting, Saphira seems to be pretty superior, and it comes down to the actual riders.
Well, she's also so much older than him too, and he's not. I think he grew real fast. So
yeah, that's what they said. It's like he's almost bigger than her with much less age,
which is clearly not natural. So it would make a lot of sense that Saphira would be better, because she grew naturally and was able to like learn her body, her flying, all that stuff. But also Glader said that she was like very naturally skilled. So
yeah, I guess that's true. It's like in puberty where you aren't quite used to how big your feet are. That's what we're talking
about. Exactly. Like, or like have you ever seen, I know this is like not the same thing, but the cute little lion cubs when they have like the most giant feet and they're just so cute, but they're so clumsy?
Very cute. Okay, I was disappointed too. So when Aragon was having his training with Oramus, they like explicitly talk about, what if you ever had to fight side by side with an Urgle? And he's like, no, no way, never. They're pure evil.
And then it's like happens.
Yeah, but Oramus tells him like, oh, you should really reevaluate that. Like, with all this wisdom you're acquiring, I would hope you'd be able to be more empathetic and like understand the similarity between all living things. Aragon doesn't absorb that lesson one bit.
Aragon is...
He's like, no freaking way.
I know, and you're like, dude, listen. Sorry, I'm logging into my computer for work. But yeah, I agree. I feel like he listens to Oramus on everything. And then that one thing he's just so stubborn about. You're like, why can't... Like, what is it about that? Because with the slave trader, he was like, oh, you can't kill him. Like, that's murder. He's undefended or something like that. But he's literally selling humans as slaves. He was going to take you and sell you as a slave, and Arya and stuff like... But in that case, he was like, oh, he's still a person. But when the Urgles come around, you're like, oh, no, they're beasts. I'm like...
And, okay, you've spent the last few months listening to nature around you, literal beasts, and like being
like ants. You got obsessed with ants.
Right. The beauty of their consciousnesses, they're all just appreciating life. But not that beast. That one's worse.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think he held on to that prejudice a little longer than should have fit with all the education that he's been getting.
Well, and Nasawada let go of it real quick, and her dad was like killed and right in front of her by Urgles.
Yeah, that made me respect her a lot more. So,
yeah, I agree.
To do that so quickly.
I also wrote that down here actually, whereas like I feel like the Urgles kind of give us a deeper look into like different cultures and how it's very difficult to judge someone based on their culture because of the way your culture is. Like I feel like there are some things that we can universally say is probably not okay, right? But sorry, there's a weird sound outside. It's fun. But yeah, it's kind of hard to like judge other people's cultures based on what you know of them, because like he gets into their minds, right? And he sees like, oh, they have families that they love. And I'm like, well, yeah, do you think they just like band up and kill people for fun? Like, yeah, they might, but they band together, which kind of tells you, right? They have some sort of connection to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess Lord of the Rings kind of skirted that one by having them literally born of mud and things. So it's like, oh yeah, there's no Uruk-hai children that are going to miss their dad.
Yes.
But Urgles have families. And Ormus even said that, like, oh, what about the women and children Urgles? And he's like, I don't think they exist.
They just pop into existence. Yeah, no, I agree.
Frustrated me with Aragon. Come on, you should have matured more about that part.
Aragon is very stubborn in his views of things. And I think that's something that Oramus really struggles with when he's teaching him, right? When he's like, go sit and listen longer, right? He's like, you're not getting it. Like, you're not seeing this. Because Aragon like gets very stuck in the way he sees things. And I think it's very difficult for him to change.
Although I do think a lot about like the time scale of all this and how well he masters the ancient language and things.
Yeah, that's actually kind of unrealistic.
It's a little unrealistic, but I'm choosing to think, wow, he's got such a mind for it. So
right?
He must study really hard. So many flashcards.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I don't believe that he got that good that fast, but we're gonna go with it.
Maybe with the, I mean, Saphir is still relatively young too, so maybe how quickly the dragon.
Yeah, but her brain works better, I think. Like, her brain is older because she has so much from her past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe that's helping Aragon in his language studies.
We'll say that.
We'll say that.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of cute where she's off, being the love-struck fool with the older dragon too. It's
I
kind of
know. I felt so bad for her at that point.
well, at least she got over it, though. Unlike Aragon, she's not still chasing him.
Yeah. But I feel like in Saphira's defense, she legitimately is like, well, it's you or nothing, right? She's not like, I don't have other options. You don't have other options. Like,
Right. Yeah,
it's either that or dragons die out.
Mhm.
So I'll give her much more of a pass than I give Aragon.
Right. Which I think Aragon says something to that effect. Like, I have to be with Arya because I'm immortal. She's immortal. I couldn't possibly go for any other mortal woman because they'll die off. But it's like, also, if you're immortal, you've got infinite time to find someone else too. There's going to be
Right.
there's going to be other immortal
Right.
people.
Whereas Saphira very much probably thinks like there isn't really much time, right? Like if she happens to die, her race is gone.
Mhm. Yeah, all the others are male and crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
But she was pretty like juvenile in her flirting.
Oh my gosh, yes, she was.
She was like the equivalent of the like little boys pulling girls' hair on the playground is what she was doing with him.
I know. And Glader, I swear, was so patient. The dude deserves a medal. I would have been like, you knock it off.
Stop acting like a puppy. Fate of the world relies on you.
I know. Oh, so funny. Oh, I'm excited to read the next one. I'm really looking forward to it. I wanted to start reading it right away, but I was like, no, have this live show first, then you can read the next one.
It's probably what I should have done. Like I'm trying to be careful not to say anything from the next one.
I remember quite a bit. Like there's a lot of the details that I don't remember, but I do remember most of the big plot points.
Mm-hmm.
I think I only read Inheritance once though. So that one I'll probably forget a lot more from that one. Because like I said, I read Aragon and then I reread like every book as the next one came out. So I read Aragon, then like Aragon Eldest, then Aragon Eldest Brazinger, then Aragon Eldest Brazinger, and Inheritance. So.
Right, just like we're doing this time with War Talk.
Exactly. So I have a lot more memory of the first couple than I do of the others.
Yeah, but I'm on such a roll right now. I don't want to interrupt the series to read something else. So I think I'll probably.
Well, I already have. So.
Well, I know you do. You have obligations. Nice obligations.
Okay. Well, I think that's about what I got for this one. Let's go ahead, say goodbye to everyone who's watching and everyone who comes back and watches the replay. And I will be posting when the Brazinger one will be doing as well. It'll probably be sometime at the end of this month, beginning of next month. So we'll see you all there. Thank you for joining. Bye.